And the counting continues for the high-stakes U.S. midterm elections. There's no clear winner that has emerged yet. According to reports, 371 of the 435 race of the U.S. House have been called, with Republicans taking 199. The last actually was about 201, while Democrats are trailing with close to 180 seats. On the other hand, in the Senate, the Democrats seem to have upper hand with 48 seats. And it's a tie, really, but the Democrats may just manage to control the Senate. In a critical win for President Joe Biden and his party, John Fetterman flipped a Republican-held U.S. Senate seat in Pennsylvania, beating Republican celebrity Dr. Mehmet Oz, who was actually backed by Donald Trump. So Trump's hopes for a big comeback may have been dented further, with two other candidates apart from Oz backed by him also losing, including Doug Mastriano and Don Bolduc. Georgia, meanwhile, may reportedly see a runoff next month. So one could say that the prospects of a red wave have dimmed, but it could still sway either way, and they could have different repercussions. So what are the repercussions? What does this really mean? Why is the world watching the US midterm? To speak on this, I'm joined today by Meera Shankar, former ambassador to USA and Germany, Chidanand Rajghatta, columnist, Times of India, Rajkamal Rao, MD of Rao Advisors LLC. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us. Chidanand, let me come to you first on all of the excitement. So this red wave doesn't seem to be happening, but is it still very likely that Republicans will control the House, and what are the implications of that for Joe Biden?
Right. Thank you for having me. Yeah, red wave, no. Red wave, red tsunami, more like a red puddle, or as you put it, a ripple. Yeah, it was expected to be a bloodbath for Democrats, a blowout for Republicans. None of that happened. And so I think Democrats are rejoicing, actually, even though they are on track to lose the House narrowly. They had a 5-seat majority in the House of Representatives. It now looks like they may lose up to 5 to 10 seats, and Republicans will gain control. The Senate, again, may be tied, or they even sneak ahead. You know, it's 50-50 currently. They may even sneak ahead by a seat. So yeah, it's quite spectacular. In fact, I think President Biden will have the bragging rights for being the best performing incumbent president in midterm polls in recent times. Just by way of comparison, I looked up the numbers, and Bill Clinton lost almost 50 seats in 1994 midterm. Barack Obama lost a record 62 seats in 2010. So, losing a narrow 10 seats is quite spectacular, and then holding on to the Senate. More to the point, they have also won, Democrats have also won very important state elections. They look like winning the state Senate in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, the state House in Pennsylvania. And these are very important because states actually, control elections in many ways. And a Republican stranglehold on state legislatures would have meant they can set the laws, they can, manipulate voting laws. So all in all, it's a pretty impressive performance. And, the Senate race, for instance, in Pennsylvania, that we just mentioned, where the Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman won against a Trump-backed candidate, that is an indication that Trumpism is being rejected. Compounding that, the governor of Florida, incumbent, Ron DeSantis, won a second term in a spectacular fashion, a 20% win. And that means there's a new challenger for Trump within the Republican Party. And so now the bloodletting has already begun in the Republican Party, and I think the Democrats are rejoicing. But look, as to the overall impact, the thing is, this is a split verdict. And we are going to have a lame duck president. It's going to be very difficult.
So we'll just come to that for more specifics in a bit. That what does it mean for the remainder of Joe Biden's presidency? But it's also important what happens next on November 15th. And I'm saying November 15th because remember, Donald Trump said he had this big announcement on November 15th. Does that announcement get tweaked after what has happened tonight? Ambassador Shankar, the big picture, for viewers who are watching who may not be so obsessed about American politics, American elections per se, but want to understand broadly implications and what it means for the world, what it means for India. Does it really matter that Joe Biden will perhaps have a lame duck presidency for the remainder of his term? How does it make a difference to us?
Yeah, I think it doesn't matter so much because there has been a broad bipartisan consensus between Democrats and Republicans to build the relationship with India. And indeed, some in India have nostalgic memories of the Trump administration as being very well disposed to India. So I don't really see a change insofar as relations with India are concerned. You can expect continuity, but it could impact on other areas of US foreign policy, for instance, Ukraine, because there is till now, there's been bipartisan support for the aid which has gone to Ukraine.
Right.
But many of the Trump wing of the Republican Party question whether this kind of support is needed, and they're not likely to be so forthcoming with clearing large packages of aid for Ukraine in future. So that remains to be seen which way the Republican Party goes on this issue, because till now, the Republicans in the Congress and the Senate have been broadly supportive of Joe Biden's policies on Ukraine. If there is some kind of a speed breaker, I won't say a reversal, but a speed breaker on America's support to Ukraine, then you may see Ukraine being nudged in the direction of negotiations with Russia. And if those tensions come down, if negotiations resume, perhaps the world could be in a better place than it is today.
Some would argue that should happen no matter what the outcome of this midterm election is. If the US is in a position to nudge the two sides towards some solution, they should do it in any case instead of adding fuel to fire.
Yes, they should. But till now, the Democrats have not shown a willingness to really push negotiations, though there are recent reports of Jake Sullivan being in touch with his Russian counterpart and of at least pushing the Ukrainians to not rule out talks with Putin, absolutely. So some little bit of a push, but at the same time, continued support on a gigantic scale to feed the war machine. So you have, not a very serious nudge towards negotiations. That nudge, I think, could become stronger if the Republican right, along with the Democratic left, puts more pressure. You had this recent development where around 30 or so Democratic leaders had given a representation or a resolution, urging negotiations on Ukraine, and then they were asked to withdraw the letter, which they did. So
that could change. Yes,
one would hope that the election results push in the direction of a greater recognition.
That's a very tangible sort of possible impact, which will have an effect on all of us all around the world. Mr. Rao, let me bring you in to the conversation. The context of the midterms are also important. Sky high inflation, an economy that is not doing very well, real issues that people are facing. Joe Biden has not been seen as a very popular president, but he seems to have come out fairly well from this midterm, isn't it?
Absolutely. In fact, that is it is a paradox of this election. So when Chidanand said that Biden outperformed Obama and Clinton, I was nodding my head. At the same time, most Americans said that they're very dissatisfied with the direction of the economy and inflation. So I think the Reuters poll showed Biden's approval at 39%. So what is really fascinating is, Obama's and Bill Clinton's approval ratings were much higher. They still lost seats. So here, Biden's approval rating is much lower, but he managed to, as you very well put, convert a red tsunami into a red puddle. So this is a paradox of gigantic proportions that we'll be studying for a while, right? Absolutely, you're right, Tamanna. The American people are not happy, and to the ambassador's comments, I agree with her wholeheartedly that when Pramila Jayapal, who was the leader of the progressives in the Democratic Party, she had written that letter to essentially urge the Biden administration to negotiate in Ukraine. The incoming House Speaker, indeed, if the Republicans gain control, is Kevin McCarthy. He has already said that there will be no more blank checks. So you're absolutely right that we ought to be nudging, America ought to be nudging a settlement in Ukraine. But the truth is that it is America who is giving Ukraine all the weapons to fight back. So something like $65 billion of weapons and very advanced weapons. So it is America that is actually speaking. On the one hand, Jake Sullivan goes and then talks, but at the same time, they're continuing to send weapons. So you're absolutely right. Something is going to have to happen because Americans are tired of sending checks over to Ukraine.
Americans are not happy. I just want to get Chidanand in on that. Mr. Rao saying Americans are not happy. One assumes the outcome of an election is the reflection of what the people of that nation want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been evident for some time that, Americans are fundamentally opposed to, foreign wars. President Trump, for all his other, faults, recognized that. And I think there will be pressure now, and particularly since, Republicans gain control of the House. They have the purse strings, and I think things will dry up. Probably in anticipation of that, Jake Sullivan is out there urging Ukrainians to start talking. More interesting thing also for me is the knife fight in the Republican Party. I mean, to think that this election was supposed to turbocharge Trump's bid for another White House term. And that's going to get a setback simply because within the Republican Party itself, it's so evident that there are many, many people, including possibly the Republican leadership, the Senate leadership, for instance, who are not keen on Trump running. And I see that, the knives are already out. A lot of people are blaming Trump for this loss, for pushing his MAGA candidates, many of whom have lost. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting couple of years. On the one hand, you have Biden, who is going to be hamstrung by lack of control over the House and maybe even the Senate or a tight Senate. And on the other hand, you see this Republican knife fight. There's going to be a lot of bloodletting. And if Trump is ousted from his leadership position, I mean, notional leadership position, he's not a sort of elected party leader. But the fact that he is going to be sort of sidelined will enrage him. He's already threatened Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, who's emerging as a putative candidate, a putative challenger. Yesterday, I saw that he said something like, I know things about Ron DeSantis that nobody else knows, and I'm going to expose him. Typical Trump tactics. He's going to,
Chidanand, he called him Ron DeSanctimonious.
Right. And I was actually writing this morning that Trump has been Ron desanctified, because I think the fear of Trump is going out of the party, because a lot of people have waited for this moment when Trump seems vulnerable and they'll jump on him. This is politics after all. And so there'll be a lot of bloodletting. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting 2 years. But hey, at the end of the day, for the American people, in terms of, the kitchen table issues, every poll showed that inflation was a major concern. It was not, war, abortion, guns. It was really inflation.
Right.
And it's quite amazing when you come to think of it that a president who's, managing 8% inflation actually manages to do reasonably well at the polls. I find that astonishing. It tells us that a lot of people misread one major issue. When Biden said that democracy is in danger, he kept on beating this thing about this is a battle for soul of America. I think a lot of people appreciated that. So I think many Americans understood that there was the pain of inflation, but there was also danger, a fundamental danger actually, that this country is facing. It was sliding towards, many people have said, civil war.
Yeah.
Some people find it
So,
alarming, but I think
it's kind of what we say in Indian politics, the Tina factor, that Biden may have not done great, but Trump is scarier.
Absolutely. Trump is scarier to many parts of America.
Since we're talking about Ukraine, Russia, just a quick update which has come in on AFP just a few minutes ago actually, that Russia has ordered its military to withdraw from Ukraine's Kherson city. That's important because Kherson was where Russia had taken control. And the timing is key because it's coming as midterm polls are getting cleared up. So I don't know how much that situation will develop. We'll have to wait and watch. Ambassador Shankar, in terms of things on India's to-do list vis-a-vis the United States, will we see more procrastination, more timelines pushed back, or will it be business as usual?
I think it will be business as usual. And I think you will see a twofold strategy, and that is working much more closely together in terms of the Indo-Pacific and carrying forward the Quad and other cooperative arrangements with regard to the Quad. And on the other hand, an independent stance with regard to Ukraine. And you're going to see that continue because India's geopolitical situation is such that it needs its defense relationship with Russia, particularly with Chinese troops deployed on the border and 60% of India's defense equipment still being of Russian origin. And on the other hand, with regard to the Indo-Pacific, it wants to work very closely with America to achieve a better balance and to handle what both see as their most formidable challenge in the coming years, that is how to handle assertive and increasingly aggressive China. Right. So I do see this dual strand in the relationship continuing. But to come back to what Chidanand was saying, I think really you do have a situation where the Republicans see an opportunity to get Trump's constituency minus Trump. With Ron DeSantis having this huge lead of 20% and already having been talked about as a putative presidential candidate in the past, I think this cements the possibility of his running, and the fact that many of Trump's endorsed candidates have lost weakens his hold on the Republican electoral machinery, if you will.
All right. So they found maybe one outcome. They found an alternative to Trump. So if I were to summarize, very quickly, Biden didn't do as bad as was expected. The red wave turned into a red ripple. Trump got shown up that he doesn't have the clout that he claims he has, and the Republicans may have just found an alternative to him. If I had to sum it up in very quick bullet points. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us as we've broken down what's come out of the midterm elections. Of course, the final results are still awaited.